everyone, this is Linda from Colourwerx Designs and welcome into the Colourwerx Design House. This is the beginning of our 5th quilt-along. If you're new to any of our Colourwerx quilt-alongs, I invite you to join us over at our Facebook group page at Colourwerx QuiltAlongs, where you can share progress photos and ask questions as we move through all these quilt-alongs. So this is the first day of the first week of our new quilt-along called Splendor, which is the quilt that you see right behind me here. This is a beautiful 54-inch by 54-inch quilt with lots of negative space in the background for beautiful machine quilting, as well as easy to applique pop art flowers. So this is the first day of the first week, and the first thing we're going to do is review the schedule. So this is a 4-week quilt-along. The first week, which is the week we're in, is all about gathering your pattern and getting your materials together. Week 2, we're going to applique all the small flower applique blocks. Week 3, we're going to applique the larger center quilt block. And then week 4, we're going to put all of our units together and finally finish the quilt top. So today is week 1 again, and we're going to talk about gathering your pattern and getting all your materials together and what you'll need to get started. So first, you have to go to the shop and get your pattern, and those are over at the shop, and you can get a paper or PDF format. If you're looking for a project that might be a little bit smaller in nature, you could also follow along on this quilt-along and do the mini Splendor pattern. So both those patterns are available for you in our Colourwerx shop. And again, Splendor pattern or mini Splendor pattern are available in both PDF and paper format. You're also going to need to start thinking about your background materials. You're going to need about 4.5 yards of fabrics for your background materials. So this could be just one fabric if you want to do that, or if you like the quilt that you see on the back here, this is made up for a more scrappy look, which are 12 1/3 yard cuts of fabrics. My quilt that I'm going to be making alongside you in these next 4 weeks, I've actually chosen to be much more dramatic, and I'm going to be using an assortment of black fabrics, and I've chosen 9 1/2 yards, and that also adds up to about 4.5 yards of scraps, if you look at it that way. For the flower appliques, you're going to need about 2 1/4 yards of scraps. But these are also layer cake friendly applique shapes. And what I mean by that is, if you have a bunch of orphaned 10-inch squares hanging around in your stash, or a layer cake that you want to use for this, you can certainly do that. You can get a whole small flower shape out of one 10-inch square, or the larger petals out of a single 10-inch square for each one of those. So again, the materials you're going to need are about 4.5 yards for your background fabric and about 2 1/4 yards for your flower appliques. There are 2 other items that you're going to need to gather this week as well. You're going to need some fusible web, which is adhesive fusible web like this. This is called Heat and Bond Light, and this is my favorite fusible web. So make sure it's an adhesive fusible web that you can draw your shapes on. The other thing you're going to need is sulky stabilizer, or any type of stitching stabilizer that you might use for digitized embroidery. So make sure it's not a fusible stabilizer, but more like a tearaway stabilizer. And I'll put the picture of this up there, but my favorite is the sulky iron-on tearaway stabilizer. Once you've gathered all those together, you're going to need to pre-cut your background fabrics in order to be ready to go for week 2 next week. So I'm going to go over to my cutting table now and pre-cut these very quickly. And so that's it for week number 1. Thank you so much for joining us. Next week, week number 2, we're going to be appliquing the small flower quilt blocks. Until then, happy quilting everyone, and we'll see you next week.